Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Hope today my sound is a lot better. Something happened to it yesterday. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, it's down there. You can also get a link to my book. And I'm going to do a narration at the end of this with like a poem, and the link to the actual recording that was released by my company, Jace Records, in 1990. The link will be down below. It's called Stage of Fools Narration. This is not the singing version, but the speaking version. And I'm going to talk today about a perverted police officer who has just been sentenced to life imprisonment. And he'll be in the system for a long time now because he's got a minimum of 12 years before he can apply for release on parole. His name's Lewis Edwards, and he was abusing young girls from the age of 10 to 16, persuading them to send him images of themselves in various stages of undress. And not only did he use these photographs for his own entertainment, if that's what you can call it, he also blackmailed the girls, threatening to tell their families and to show their neighbours, etc. And in one instance, he threatened a girl that he was going to go around and shoot her parents. A serving police officer, this. Quite what has happened to the police force, I don't know, and happened in parts to the prison service. Because as I previously said, you see repeatedly prison staff being prosecuted for inappropriate relations with inmates and smuggling, they call it trafficking actually. It's taking things like mobile phones in and drugs, etc., to inmates, and which is very dangerous because you get somebody out of their mind on something like spice, they seem to have a superhuman strength, and the problem is dealing with them. You're going to put them down properly. And who's going to put them down? We've previously mentioned that the Beverly sisters aren't going to do it. So the system is broken in that respect. But with regards to this police officer, Lewis Edwards, he will be in the system now for some time, and he's going to find it very difficult. I mean, he's got a double whammy there, hasn't he? He's a former police officer and a sex offender. He is going to definitely need Rule 43 by application. So straight away he goes in. I think he'll be sent to a sex offenders unit. He wouldn't be safe in the ordinary system, having seen what happens to people that do things like that. When I was at Wormwood Scrubs, they tried to locate the Moors murderer Ian Brady on D-Wing, which is the lifers wing at Wormwood Scrubs. He lasted about 3 days, and they found him in the recess on the fours. Somebody had poured boiling water over him, and he was quite badly burnt. He didn't like that, by the way. I mean, at least they didn't bury him on the moors, did they? Ian Brady. So he was a sex offender, and my experience is that there are people out there, a bit like Charles Bronson, who has made it his personal mission to mangle and damage any sex offender he can get his hands upon. It's not really for inmates or indeed prison staff to actually administer any kind of rough justice. The courts have decided that the punishment for their crimes will be the loss of their liberty through imprisonment. Unless, of course, you're Jeremy Clarkson, when you think, that people should go into prison and get shanked, with a homemade weapon stuck between the ribs. I mean, what is Clarkson thinking about? writing such nonsense. He is, in actual fact, promoting a criminal offence, although he doesn't probably think so. Somebody should have a word with him from the police, take him in and put him under caution and warn him, that such behaviour is, in actual fact, instigating criminal offences. He obviously is an entitled fat buffoon. Yeah. Jeremy Clarkson, last week's Sunday Times. Have a look. Anyway, we're talking today about Lewis Edwards, who is a former police officer. He's only aged, I believe, 24. And they found him. He had 4,500 indecent images of children. And he admitted to 160 incidences of abusing children. I mean, and blackmailing them and threatening to murder the parents. A serving police officer. It's very hard to get your head around this. What are the problems here? Obviously, I mean, this guy was from the South Wales. Another police officer sentenced yesterday from Thames Valley. That's just outside London, yeah. He was sentenced for having sexual relations with little girls. Little girls, 11, 12, 13 years old. Numerous of them, yeah. And there'd been warnings. What is happening to the vetting process? It used to be incredibly difficult to get into one of the security services like the police or the prisons. Nowadays, they've got signs at the front of the jail. Apply here, yeah? See, I believe so, yeah. And I've seen advertisements on the internet, on YouTube specifically, where they've got a young female dressed up in with a jailer's uniform on, saying anybody can be a prison officer. Quite honestly, that seems to be the case. That anybody not only could be a prison officer or a police officer, anybody is. And the Met Police and that have got 1,000 officers under investigation. 1,000 officers under investigation for misconduct. What is going on? Anyway, what will happen to this Lewis Edwards when he gets into prison? As I said, it's a double whammy. He's in there for sexual offences against little children, and he's also a former police officer. And if somebody can get their hands on him, like Charlie Bronson's idea of instant justice, that is what's going to happen. I reckon in one way or another this guy may very well get it, unless the prison service get him away on Rule 43 rapid, so he never actually touches the main system. But if he does, it's going to be extremely difficult for this guy. I don't believe in that kind of assaulting inmates myself, because anybody can make a mistake. This guy hasn't made a mistake. He's a deliberate paedophile, and as such, is going to serve a long time in prison, which is punishment. That's his punishment. Not being knifed or have boiling water thrown at him. That's not the punishment. It's prison, and that's where he stays. Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure that he's going to find it very unpleasant. I've seen a number of inmates who sex offenders who were seriously injured during their service. In fact, I recall that some staff there were a couple of thugs at Strangeways who did the bidding of officers. I don't know what they were getting for it, but if somebody that they didn't like was on the landing, they'd let these guys out and they'd go and give them a working over. I intervened in one day. I said, right, what are you doing out your cell? He should have been in his cell, you see, at lunchtime. Oh, he said, I've been sent by such and such a body. I won't name the senior officer that sent him, but I know who he is. He's sometimes seen on television as well, but I won't name him. But if you're watching this, I know who you are, and you know I know, yeah? He used to unlock this particular thug, and he was out of his cell one day looking for this particular prisoner to give him a beating. As I say, I intervened and sent him back to his landing, said, you tell the senior officer I've sent you back and you're not on this wing when I'm on. So later that afternoon, this guy come up to me, said, when I send somebody to do a job, you get out the way, all right? So he was threatening me. What are you going to do? You're going to go and see Norman Brown, the governor? He ain't going to do anything, is he? You just say, don't get in the way, Mr. Sutton. Things like that. That's what Norman used to say. Anyway, that's Tales for the Jails today. I'm now going to... That's not a song you're going to get. This is a narration that I wrote. I actually wrote this. I wrote this in the studio when I was recording another pervert called PJ Proby. He was into little girls as well. He liked them around about 10 or 11. I intervened with him and put a stop to that. And that was the end of my working with PJ Proby, because once you actually do something like that and stop them, they won't work with you again. Nobody will work with you who was associated with them. That's why Jimmy Savile was allowed to roam free and conduct his offences. Because to stop him would mean that the door closed not on Jimmy Savile, but on you. It happened to me. This is a narration that I wrote, and there's a link down below to this, the recording on YouTube, recorded by PJ Proby. I wrote this in the studio in 1990. This is Stage of Fools narration. You know something, people? All the world's a stage, and all the men and all the women, well, they're just players. They got their exits and they've got their entrances. And one man in his time plays so many parts, he probably forgets them all. You see, life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage. Dear God, he has to pay for that. You know, when we're born, like any other baby, we cry that we have come to this great stage of fools. And since I cannot prove a lover to pass these fair, well-favoured days, then I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasure of these days. Then they for sudden joy did weep, and I for sorrow sang, that such a king should play Bo Peep and go the fools among. I'd like to know something. When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost, maybe won. And you know, as a man said, we are but players on this great stage of fools. There you go. Stage of Fools narration, as written by John G. Sutton. That's Tales from the Jails.